It's easy to forget just how dire things were for Nintendo back in 2016. Their most recent home console, the Nintendo Wii U, was a colossal failure, the likes of which seemed nearly impossible after the wild success of its predecessor. The most concerning part of the situation is that this actually wasn't all too out of the ordinary for the company. If you remove the Wii from the equation, each and every home console Nintendo had released was selling worse than what came before it. In many ways, the Wii was a total outlier, breaking up the trend of what had been a steadily declining home console brand. As Nintendo geared up for their next console, there were legitimate concerns about their future in this space, or lack thereof. But suddenly, at the snap of a finger, everything changed. For years, we had been hearing rumors of Nintendo's next console, referred to at that time as the NX. And on October 20th, 2016, we finally got our first official look. Revealed as the Nintendo Switch, it would be a hybrid machine, offering a traditional home console experience that could also be taken on the go. This initial reveal trailer was genuinely masterful, perfectly displaying the Switch's core features, games, and capabilities without any voiceover explanations required. The idea that I could just pick up my console and continue playing it wherever I was headed was incredible. A comparison I always make is to that of the Wii U gamepad. It always felt like the gamepad was begging to be used as a portable, although it never could since it needed to be in close proximity to the console. The Switch was what I always wanted the gamepad to be, giving the option to take your games with you anywhere. And at the time, this idea of console quality gaming on the go was not nearly as ubiquitous as it is now. The trailer did a really great job showing off the features and also the ways you could use them, such as playing on an airplane or taking it to a party with friends. It helped make the Switch seem inherently valuable right away. To see Nintendo able to deliver such an effective first trailer was a much needed good sign after the disastrous Wii U marketing campaign, which left many unaware of what that console even was. But with the Switch, no questions here. It's a home console that switches to a portable, both easy to understand and exciting. It was genius, and fans everywhere could not wait to see more. The next major press event for Switch came in January 2017, with the appropriately named Nintendo Switch Presentation 2017. What I always found very significant about this event was that it was a live press conference. This was notable because 4 years prior, Nintendo became the first major company to drop the traditional E3 model, switching to a pre-recorded Nintendo Direct for their E3 2013 showcase. From that day forward, Nintendo did not do any live events or big flashy conferences. They always just stuck by their trusty Directs. But for the Switch presentation, they were back on the big stage, broadcasting live to the world. This was not a coincidence. I believe this was Nintendo making a statement, their way of letting everyone know we're still here after the Wii U's failure. Big showcases such as those at E3 were always flashy, becoming a competition of which company could outshine the other. It became a status symbol as much as it was an avenue to show off new games. It's a very specific feeling, one that just simply cannot be replicated by a pre-recorded Nintendo Direct. The Switch Presentation 2017 helped represent the new era, flushing the memories of the past and differentiating this event from the Directs that had defined the Wii U days. Also, holding this live conference was a sign that Nintendo must have been pretty confident in what they were going to show, and they sure did have every right to be. After more specific details about the console itself, Nintendo begins to outline their launch window game lineup, announcing ARMS, Splatoon 2, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, and Super Mario Odyssey alongside a new look at Breath of the Wild. You could not have asked for a better first-party showing. Nintendo knew what they had was special. You could see it in their faces as they presented these games. Their excitement popped through the screen, and that passion extended to the audience. I don't think it can be overstated how important this presentation was, and just how masterfully they nailed it. With a quickly approaching release date of March 3rd, 2017, excitement was high, but there was also a fair bit of skepticism. Many wondered if Nintendo still had it in them after the sad state of their previous console. Before release, analysts were mixed in their Switch predictions. Some thought the console was too expensive, did not have a large enough launch lineup, and would be dragged down by the negative brand reputation from Wii U. But it pretty quickly became clear that those predictions had been wrong. The Switch seemed to click with consumers immediately, becoming Nintendo's fastest selling console ever. It had sold over 2.7 million units by the end of its launch month in March 2017, outperforming their internal expectations. In fact, Nintendo had to change their production and shipment methods just to keep up with the extremely high demand. So what was it about the Switch that attracted buyers so fast and so effortlessly? First and foremost, I think the Switch nailed the simplicity necessary for a product to have a wide range of appeal. Anybody could look at it and understand its function of switching from home console to portable, and could see the value in that. In many ways, it reminded me of the Wii, where anyone could instantly comprehend the idea of swinging the remote like a baseball bat or turning it like a steering wheel. It's the ease of use that the Wii U always lacked, where no one really seemed to understand what the gamepad was for, not even Nintendo themselves. However, when it came to the Switch system, things were not always perfect. There were a lot of issues on day one, most notably problems with the Joy-Con controllers and how easily the console could be scratched by the dock. Another thing I always personally disliked about the Switch was its UI. It is just so boring. It lacks any of the personality and fun that I had always associated with Nintendo consoles. I can understand why this decision was made, as Nintendo wanted to distance themselves from their previous failed generation. I also think they wanted this more basic UI to represent that the Switch was a serious gaming machine, despite its portable capabilities. But even if there is logical sense behind this decision, it didn't make it any less disappointing. And there are plenty of ways to make your UI look sophisticated that aren't just a pure black or white background that sits in complete silence. This was never really addressed throughout the whole generation, and remains my least favorite aspect of the system itself. But let's be real, you aren't buying a console because the home screen looks nice or the eShop has a cute background song. You're buying a console for the games. And the game that no doubt helped the Switch a great deal in its early days was of course its premier launch title, The Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild was a generation-defining, genre-altering game, and to have it right alongside the Switch's release was incredible. I'm not sure we've ever seen a more impactful launch title across any console, other than Super Mario 64. It's clear that Breath of the Wild was a major draw, as Nintendo reported early sales of the game were nearly 1-to-1 with Switch console sales. In other words, almost every single person buying a Switch was picking up a copy of Breath of the Wild alongside it, which is absolutely unheard of for a fully priced game that is not bundled with the system. A lot of people had stopped paying attention to Nintendo during their previous generation, and Breath of the Wild stood as a strong reminder for many that this company still makes some of the best games in the industry, and you would not want to miss out. Breath of the Wild was a perfect reintroduction to the magic of Nintendo, and they were just getting started. Breath of the Wild was just the beginning of what would come to define the Switch generation, the absolutely unbelievable first-party game output. What Nintendo was able to achieve is just unreal when looking back at it all. Nearly every single year, you could expect a truly special game from them, and more often than not, you could expect several. Combine that with the steady flow of Wii U ports making their way to the system, and there was rarely a moment where it felt like we had nothing to play. Part of what I found most impressive about the Switch game output is that it never seemed to slow down, and if anything, it actually sped up as the Switch aged. The reason for this is likely the fact that Nintendo was only supporting one console for the first time in a very long time. Ever since the introduction of the Game Boy, Nintendo had been juggling both their home consoles and portable systems at once, ensuring both SKUs were receiving adequate first-party support. For decades, their dev teams were built with this in mind, but the Switch suddenly changed things. Nintendo did continue supporting the 3DS for a few years of the Switch lifecycle, with releases continuing until 2019. But from that point on, it was all hands on deck for the Switch, and with everyone at Nintendo now focused on just one machine, they were able to keep releases coming relatively quickly, while still upholding their expected quality. It's no surprise that the Switch continued selling like crazy when games this good were coming this often. Nintendo's focus on exclusive first-party games is extremely interesting, as it goes against the rest of the industry. With previously Xbox exclusive games now coming to rival hardware, and PlayStation slowly expanding to PC and other platforms, Nintendo stands alone as the only console manufacturer that still keeps their games 100% exclusive. And this strategy has worked out extremely well for them. In conjunction with the high Switch console sales, Switch game sales were incredible as well. Basically, any Nintendo franchise to receive a Switch entry broke its previous sales records, often doing so by a large margin. Their Smash Bros. Game on Switch became the best-selling fighting game of all time. Their Mario Kart game on Switch became the best-selling racing game of all time. And let's not forget Animal Crossing selling nearly 50 million copies. I have never seen a console sustain such high first-party software sales like this. And honestly, that right there is more valuable than any console sale could be, and I think it bodes extremely well for the upcoming Switch 2 generation, but more on that later. Alongside the never-ending avalanche of first-party games, Nintendo released some hardware variations to the Switch as well. The first came in September 2019 with the Switch Lite. This was a portable-only model, without dock functionality and without the ability to detach the Joy-Cons. It also had a smaller screen, allowing this to serve as a much cheaper alternative. It's probably not a coincidence that Nintendo's support for 3DS wrapped up right around the same time the Switch Lite was released. It essentially replaced the 3DS in that space and became Nintendo's more casual, portable-only option. I think the Switch Lite is a very underrated part of the Switch success story. Millions upon millions of people opted for this cheaper version, especially those who were buying for young children or maybe only wanted a Switch for one game, such as Animal Crossing. The other console variation was the Switch OLED, which was a somewhat strange device simply because of all the rumors that preceded it. For what felt like years, we were hearing rumors of a Switch Pro model that would increase the power of the device. So when we finally got this new OLED model, which essentially just gave us a better screen, it felt pretty anticlimactic. But that was not really a fault of the machine itself, just a reflection of all the talk that came before it. The Switch OLED still had a lot of value as the screen was substantially better and came with some other quality of life improvements. I doubt the OLED sold nearly as well as the Lite, but it still played a nice role in the Switch lifetime sales, which managed to reach staggering numbers. As of May 2025, the Nintendo Switch has sold 152 million units, making it the third best-selling video game console of all time, just very slightly behind the Nintendo DS for the second spot. It is highly likely that over the next several years, it will eventually pass not just the DS, but also the PlayStation 2, and take the throne as the single best-selling system ever. That is, of course, assuming Jim Ryan doesn't suddenly find another 5 million mysteriously unreported PS2 sales like he did when he retired from Sony last year. But jokes aside, whether the Switch does pass the PS2 or not is really not that important. The important point is, the Switch reached heights that have rarely been seen before, and for it to directly follow up a generation that went as poorly as Wii U is genuinely unheard of. I don't think we will ever see a console manufacturer go from 14 million units sold to 150 million units sold ever again. I am very grateful for the Switch, not just the many years I spent playing fantastic games on it, but for what it represents in this industry. The Switch brought back portable gaming, a concept that many had deemed lost to time. Before the Switch in 2017, the 3DS was on its last legs. The Vita had been dead for several years, and no other company seemed interested in giving it a go. A lot of people thought portable gaming machines couldn't work in the era of smartphones, but Nintendo proved all of that wrong. And now, 8 years later, portable gaming is massive. Machines like the Steam Deck, PlayStation Portal, or the upcoming Xbox handheld all exist because the Switch showed them it was possible and profitable to be in this space. Not only did the Switch save portable gaming, but it also saved Nintendo. And a gaming world without Nintendo is not one that I want to imagine. As we move into the Switch 2 generation, which is just about a week away from the time I'm making this video, the question on everyone's mind is, can Nintendo replicate the success and do it again? The Switch 2 will be an extremely interesting device to analyze. Assuming it does not become the literal best-selling video game console of all time, it is almost guaranteed to do worse than its predecessor. This will certainly cause a lot of negative headlines about software sales being down, or Switch 2 tracking behind Switch, or whatever else. But I think as fans, we need to keep these expectations in check. It's unrealistic to expect Switch 2 to perform better than Switch 1, and I think even Nintendo would tell you that. However, there is some legitimate legitimate cause for concern. As I'm sure most Nintendo fans know, the company hasn't had the best track record with their direct follow-up consoles. For example, the 3DS sold half as many units as the original DS. And of course, the Wii U came nowhere close to the 100 million Wii consoles that were sold. Meanwhile, Nintendo's biggest successes have always been when they turned everything upside down, bringing a brand new idea with unique branding. We saw that with the Nintendo DS, Wii, and Switch. So the Switch 2 does have some history working against it, but I think things may be different this time. First and foremost, the Switch branding is still going extremely strong, in a way that previous console brands were not. By the time the Wii U released in 2012, the Wii branding had deteriorated in a big way. A lot of people had a negative connotation with that name, due to its defining focus on motion controls and casual games. Meanwhile, many of the people who had bought a Wii over the years were not especially attached to it. You can see this from first-party software sales. Some games did quite well, such as the Wii series line, but many Nintendo first-party games from that generation sold a lot less than you may expect. Skyward Sword is one that always stood out to me. It was released very late in the Wii lifecycle and only managed 3.6 million copies sold. Now compare that to another Zelda game released late in the life cycle of its console, Tears of the Kingdom, which has already sold over 20 million copies on Switch. Current Switch owners are simply much more engaged than Wii owners or even DS owners were at the time of those console life cycles ending. It also helps that the main Switch selling point of a hybrid console is still extremely desirable as opposed to the Wii motion controls, which had gone out of style. All of this is to say, I see no reason to expect the Switch 2 won't be a success, assuming Nintendo can stay out of their own way. Admittedly, they are not off to the hottest start with this. They became the first company upping their games to $80 with Mario Kart World. They are charging money for the Switch 2 tutorial game. They are requiring a Nintendo Switch online membership to use voice chat after the first year. And many of the third-party games will be on key cards that do not have the game on the actual cartridge. So yeah, Nintendo isn't exactly doing anyone any favors this generation. And although I think the price of the Switch 2 console itself is fair, it certainly isn't cheap. All of this has caused near constant negativity on the internet surrounding the launch. We'll see if this actually ends up affecting console sales, or if it's just people on the internet complaining despite never intending to purchase one no matter what. Either way though, this much bad energy before a launch is not a great sign. In a lot of ways it does remind me of the PlayStation 3, where Sony was riding high off the PS2's success and got a bit cocky, thinking they could get away with anything. What saved PlayStation that generation was their fantastic first-party game output, and this can be a similar trajectory Nintendo follows as well. If the games are good enough, the players will buy in, and if the Switch generation is any indication, we can expect plenty of incredible Nintendo first-party games. Ultimately, that's all I'm hoping for from Switch 2. The extra power is great and very needed, and it does look like they've made some good improvements to the system and experience. But at this point in my life, Nintendo systems are nothing more to me than a way to experience their games. And if the Switch 2 can provide me with experiences even half as good as the Switch was able to provide me over the last 8 years, then we should be in for a very good time.